He just wanted to return the suitcase forgotten by his neighbor, until he heard a baby's cry from inside. But nothing could have prepared him for the secret she was hiding, and for the forbidden desire it would awaken in him. A story of passion, mystery, and dangerous choices that will shake everything you believe about love and morality. If intense and unexpected love stories like this touch your heart, subscribe to the channel and comment what you think. Every day we post new plots that move and surprise. Discover now the romance that no one dared to live. Vincent Montgomery had always been a light sleeper. Maybe it was a legacy from his days as a detective when any nighttime noise could mean danger. Or maybe it was just the weight of loneliness, which made every sound amplify in the silence of the empty apartment. That autumn dawn, while the city of Chicago slept under a veil of fog, he sensed a metallic noise coming from the hallway. It was a small, insistent sound, like the tinkling of a secret asking to be discovered. At 42 years old, Vincent carried on his back 20 years of police work, an early retirement due to psychological disability, and a bank account that guaranteed him a comfortable life in the upscale neighborhood of Lincoln Park. He also carried scars that couldn't be seen: the loss of the child who never came to be born, the wife who couldn't bear the pain and left without looking back, and the constant feeling that life owed him something that would never be paid. He opened the apartment door, just a crack, and saw, next to his neighbor Helena's threshold, a black suitcase, old, with the zipper half open and an impossible sound to ignore coming from within. A baby's cry, fragile and desperate, tearing through the silence. Helena Sullivan was, until then, just an enigma to Vincent. The younger woman with gray eyes and melancholy expression, who avoided the neighbors like someone carrying too many sins. He observed her sometimes, between the elevator door and the hallway's shadows, and felt an uncomfortable pang of desire, because she always seemed on the verge of something, on the verge of an abyss, of an escape, of a confession. A forbidden desire grew in him without ever materializing. Helena worked as a nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, always leaving early and returning late, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her white uniform immaculate, contrasting with the sadness she carried in her eyes. Vincent knew this because he had discreetly followed her a few times, driven by a curiosity he couldn't explain or control. She had lived alone in the adjacent apartment for 2 years, and in all that time, she had never received visits, never talked to anyone in the building, never shown any sign of joy or relaxation. But now there was the suitcase, and inside it, a baby. Wrapped in a thin blanket, a note: "Take care of him. I will return." In the first instant, Vincent thought about calling the police, social services, someone. But he couldn't. The memory of the child he had lost years ago, along with the wife who couldn't bear the pain, still throbbed like an open wound. There was something about that child that disarmed him, like an echo of what he had been unable to protect in the past. The baby couldn't be more than a few months old. He had light eyes, almost transparent, and a little cry that alternated between desperation and exhaustion. Vincent picked him up with a delicacy he hadn't known he possessed in a long time, and felt something move in his chest. An old pain, but also something new, warm, protective. When Helena finally reappeared, hours later, her face haggard and her clothes damp from rain, he noticed in her something even more disturbing than the suitcase itself: the decision to leave stamped in every contained gesture, as if there was no longer any way back. She fell to her knees in the hallway, begging only for silence and time. Vincent said nothing. He just extended his arms to support her. When their bodies touched, it was as if a match had been struck inside him, an electric spark, dangerous, burning the surface of his morality. Helena was 28 years old, but seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime of suffering. She had been born in Aurora, daughter of a housekeeper and a father she had never known. She had fought to graduate in nursing, had worked 2 jobs during college, and when she finally got the position at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, she thought her life would take a different direction. She never imagined that it would be there that she would meet Robert Anderson, state congressman, married, family man, publicly respected man, and privately a monster. Robert was 15 years older than her, owner of an easy smile and charm that concealed a possessive and violent nature. He had approached her during one of his visits to the hospital, courting her with expensive gifts and promises of a better life. Helena, tired of loneliness and constant struggle, allowed herself to believe that she finally deserved a little happiness. But Robert Anderson didn't offer happiness. He offered only a golden prison, made of clandestine meetings, veiled threats, and absolute control over every aspect of her life. When Helena got pregnant, he demanded she have an abortion. When she refused, he beat her for the first time, leaving her with a broken arm and a fractured rib. When she threatened to expose him publicly, he showed intimate photos he had taken without her consent and promised to destroy her career, her reputation, and, if necessary, her life. The baby was born on a cold March dawn in a public hospital in the suburbs, far from curious eyes and the press that surrounded Robert's life. Helena held him in her arms for only a few hours, knowing she couldn't take him home, couldn't raise him, couldn't even publicly acknowledge that he existed. Robert had made it clear. Either she disappeared with the child, or he would make both disappear. That night, Helena didn't return home. She remained in his apartment, quiet, sitting on the edge of the sofa, her legs folded under Vincent's loose shirt. And there, in the darkness, she told a piece of the truth. The baby was the result of a forbidden affair with an influential and violent man who wouldn't accept being exposed, who had already threatened her before. She needed to disappear before it was too late, but she didn't have the strength to abandon the child, nor the courage to take him along in her escape. Vincent listened to her in silence, feeling anger grow inside him, an anger he hadn't felt in years, since the times when he arrested men like that congressman, men who thought power gave them the right to destroy lives. But he also felt something more, a deep desire to protect Helena, to offer her the refuge she so desperately needed. "You don't have to face this alone," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I can help." Helena looked at him with a mixture of desperation and disbelief. "You don't understand. He's powerful. He has contacts in the police, in justice, in the press. If he discovers you're helping me, he'll destroy your life too." "My life has already been destroyed once," Vincent replied, approaching her. "I have nothing left to lose." And so, night after night, Helena began to return, always late, always tense, always smelling of rain and fear, to see her son for a few minutes and then leave, leaving behind a trail of perfume and unease. With each visit, the desire between her and Vincent became more impossible to deny. The lingering looks, the fingers that met by chance in the shadows, the hoarse whispers. Vincent began to know her schedules, the noises she made when arriving, the way she breathed when she was nervous. He learned to prepare coffee at the right time, to leave a clean towel in the bathroom, to speak in a low voice so as not to wake the baby. He also learned to recognize the signs of when she had been crying, when she had fought with someone, when fear consumed her more than normal. Helena, in turn, began to observe Vincent with different eyes. She saw the delicacy with which he treated the baby, the patience with which he listened to her outbursts, the silent strength he radiated even in the most difficult moments. She began to notice the details, the large calloused hands, the dark eyes that seemed to guard secrets, the way he smiled when he thought she wasn't looking. Vincent's apartment, which for years had been just a place to sleep and eat, began to transform. There were now diapers drying in the bathroom, bottles in the kitchen sink, a different smell in the air. The smell of life, of family, of something he had thought lost forever. It was on a particularly cold dawn that the tension broke all barriers. Helena arrived injured, a cut at the corner of her mouth, and Vincent received her with an embrace that soon became a kiss, urgent, hungry, overwhelming. She pushed him away once, saying they shouldn't, that it was dangerous. But he already had her in his arms, his hands sliding over her warm skin, her body yielding to his in a mute confession. Between clothes hastily torn off and contained sighs, they surrendered on the sofa, with the city sleeping around them and the certainty that there was no possible return. The sex was intense, desperate, as if both were trying to drown in each other to forget the world outside. Vincent tasted the salty flavor of Helena's tears mixed with the taste of her mouth, and knew he would never again be able to live without her. Helena surrendered completely, for the first time in years allowing herself to feel pleasure without fear, without guilt. without the sensation of being used. Afterward, lying in the dark, Helena traced with her fingers the scars on Vincent's chest, marks of a lifetime of struggles, of losses, of battles won and lost. He, in turn, gently kissed the bruises on her arms, silent promises that he would never allow anyone to hurt her again. "This shouldn't have happened," she murmured, but without conviction. "It should have," Vincent replied, pulling her closer. "It should have happened a long time ago." From that night on, everything changed. What had before been just desire became love. A forbidden, dangerous, but real love. Vincent knew he was getting into a situation that could destroy him, but he couldn't bring himself to care. Helena knew she was putting Vincent at risk, but couldn't stay away from him. The baby, who had been the catalyst for everything, seemed to perceive the change. He cried less, smiled more, and when Vincent picked him up, Helena felt her heart tighten with a mixture of gratitude and terror. Because now she had two people to protect, and the enemy she faced was more powerful than she had ever imagined. Over time, however, Helena's internal conflict became more evident. There was a heart-wrenching contradiction in her, a fierce desire for freedom, to disappear, to never be found again, to free herself from all the ties that bound her to the man who hunted her, but also a visceral terror of abandoning her son. She dreamed of night trains and empty highways, of a new name in a new city, but every time she saw the baby in Vincent's arms, she cried silently, knowing she couldn't bear never knowing what would become of him without her. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster. Helena began arriving earlier at Vincent's apartment, sometimes still in her hospital uniform, sometimes already changed, always with that expression of someone who constantly looks over their shoulder. She spent hours observing her son, memorizing every detail of his little face, every movement, every sound he made. Vincent watched her watch and felt his heart break a little more with each silent tear that rolled down her face. "He has your eyes," Vincent said one of those nights, holding the baby while Helena prepared the bottle. "No," she replied, her voice choked. "He has his father's eyes." It was the first time she mentioned Robert directly, and the name hung in the air like a threat. Vincent felt a chill down his spine, not only because of what the name represented, but because of the way Helena pronounced it, with fear, with disgust, with a pain that seemed physical. "Does he know where you are?" Vincent asked, approaching her. Helena shook her head, but her expression said otherwise. "He always knows where I am. He has people who work for him all over the city, taxi drivers, doormen, security guards. He has eyes everywhere." Vincent felt the familiar anger grow in his chest, the same anger he felt when he was a detective and encountered powerful men who thought they were above the law. But now it was different. Now it was personal. "Why didn't you report him?" he asked, although he knew the answer would be complicated. Helena laughed, but it was a bitter laugh without humor. "Report to whom? To the police? Half the detectives in Chicago dine at his house. To the press? He has journalists on his payroll. To justice? He has a law degree, has contacts in the court since college." She sat on the sofa, taking the baby in her arms. "You don't understand how it works, Vincent. Men like Robert Anderson aren't arrested. They aren't reported. They aren't punished. They're protected by a network of interests that goes far beyond what we can imagine." Vincent knelt in front of her, placing his hands on her knees. "Then we create our own network. I have contacts too. Honest detectives, upright prosecutors, journalists who aren't on anyone's payroll." "And if it goes wrong?" Helena asked, her eyes filled with tears. "If he discovers I'm with you, that you're helping me, he'll destroy you, Vincent. He'll invent accusations. He'll plant evidence. He'll make you lose everything you have." "I already lost everything once," Vincent replied, echoing the words he had said weeks before. "I'm not afraid to lose again." But Helena was afraid. Afraid of losing Vincent, afraid of losing her son, afraid of losing herself. And this fear manifested in the cruelest ways. She would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, having nightmares where Robert found the apartment and killed both Vincent and the baby. She would jump from the sofa whenever she heard the elevator, whenever someone passed in the hallway, whenever the phone rang. The forbidden romance between them intensified in this whirlwind of dilemmas. The desire increasingly feverish, the meetings that became daily, the intimacy that grew not only in sex, but in small gestures. Vincent learning to change diapers, Helena cooking for him for the first time, both falling asleep embraced on the sofa while the baby slept in the improvised crib. One night, Helena arrived with a proposal that left Vincent cold. "I found a family," she said, avoiding his gaze. "A family in Colorado who can't have children. They have money. They're good people. They could give him everything I'll never be able to give." Vincent stopped feeding the baby, feeling the world spin around him. "You're talking about giving your son up for adoption?" "It's not giving," Helena replied, but her voice trembled. It's ensuring he has a chance to live without fear, without hiding, without carrying the weight of his parents' sins." "Helena, you're crazy." Vincent stood up, the baby still in his arms. "You love this boy. I see it in your eyes every time you look at him." "Precisely because of that," she replied, and tears began to flow. "Because I love him. I need to do what's best for him. And staying with me, staying here, isn't the best." Vincent approached her, holding her by the shoulders. "And staying with me? Staying with us? Isn't that an option?" Helena looked at him with so much love and so much suffering that Vincent felt like crying too. "You don't understand. There's no possible us. Not while Robert is alive." It was then that Vincent realized how much more serious the situation was than he had imagined. Helena wasn't just running from a violent ex-boyfriend. She was running from a man who had the power to destroy lives, to make people disappear, to turn anyone's life into hell. But it was also at that moment that Vincent made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to let Helena face this alone. He wasn't going to let her give up her son out of fear. He wasn't going to let a man like Robert Anderson win. "There's a third option," he said, and Helena looked at him with curiosity. "We disappear, all three of us. I have money saved. I have contacts in other states. I have experience in investigation. We can truly disappear." Helena immediately shook her head. "No, I won't let you sacrifice your life for us." "What life?" Vincent asked, and for the first time in years, his voice carried genuine emotion. "Do you think I have a life here? Alone in this apartment, without family, without perspective, without anything that makes me wake up in the morning wanting to live?" He knelt in front of her again, still with the baby in his arms. "Helena, you and this boy are the best thing that's happened to me in years. You've given me a reason to live again. I won't let anyone take that away from me." Helena cried harder, but now they were tears of relief, of gratitude, of a love she didn't know she was capable of feeling. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Because there's no going back, Vincent. If we do this, if we disappear together, there's no going back." "I'm sure," he replied, and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of hope and fear at the same time. That night, they made love with a different intensity. It was no longer the desperation of the first encounters, but the passion of those who knew they were building something together, something worth fighting to protect. Vincent explored every inch of Helena's body as if it were the first time, memorizing every curve, every mark, every sigh. Helena surrendered completely, finally allowing herself to believe that she deserved to be loved, that she deserved to be protected, that she deserved a chance at happiness. Afterward, lying in the dark, they began to plan. Vincent spoke about a cabin he knew in the Colorado mountains, isolated without neighbors, where they could stay for a few weeks while organizing false documents and deciding where to go definitively. Helena spoke about the money she had saved, the jewelry that Robert had given her and that she could sell, the contacts she had in other hospitals that could help her get work under another name. "And if he finds us?" Helena asked at dawn when the baby had finally fallen asleep. "He won't find us," Vincent replied, but he knew he was lying. Men like Robert Anderson didn't give up easily. "But if he does, I'll be here. We'll be together." From that day on, the lives of all three changed completely. Vincent began to discreetly sell some of his belongings, transferring the money to accounts that Robert couldn't trace. Helena began working extra shifts at the hospital, saving every penny and establishing alibis for the days she would be absent. They bought clothes for the baby, diapers, medicines, everything they would need for a long trip. But they also began to notice signs that they weren't as safe as they had imagined. The building's doorman began asking questions about Helena's visits. A dark car appeared parked on the street several times. always with closed windows. Vincent's phone would ring sometimes at dawn, and when he answered, no one spoke on the other end. "He knows," Helena said one of those nights, after being sure she had been followed to the building. "Then we move up the plans," Vincent replied. "We leave tomorrow." "No," Helena shook her head. "We can't leave without being completely prepared. If he catches us on the road, without documents, without enough money—" Vincent knew she was right, but he also knew they didn't have much time. The pressure was increasing, and Robert Anderson was getting impatient. It was then that the first direct confrontation happened. Vincent was returning from the supermarket on a Saturday afternoon when he found Robert Anderson waiting for him in the building's lobby. The congressman was exactly as Vincent had imagined: tall, well-dressed, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and a presence that filled the entire space. "Mr. Montgomery," Robert said, extending his hand. "I need to talk to you." Vincent didn't accept the greeting. "We have nothing to talk about." "Yes, we do," Robert replied, and the smile disappeared. "We need to talk about the woman you're hiding in your apartment, and about the child that belongs to me." Vincent felt anger explode in his chest, but maintained his calm. These were times when his detective experience proved useful. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't treat me like an idiot," Robert said, approaching. "I know Helena is with you. I know my son is with you. And I know you two are making a mistake that will cost dearly." "Your son?" Vincent asked, and couldn't hide the contempt in his voice. What kind of father threatens the mother of his own child? Robert laughed, but it was a cold, dangerous laugh. The kind of father who doesn't accept blackmail. The kind of father who doesn't let some whore use his son to destroy his career. Vincent advanced, but Robert raised his hand, showing he wasn't alone. Outside the building, Vincent could see two large men, clearly security guards, waiting for a signal. "Careful, ex-detective," Robert said. "You might have been good in your time, but you're nothing now. Just a lonely retiree who got involved in a situation much bigger than he can handle." "What do you want?" Vincent asked, direct. "I want you to hand over Helena and the child to me. Today. Now." "And if I don't?" Robert smiled again, and this time the smile reached his eyes. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile that promised suffering. "If you don't, I'm going to destroy your life. I'll invent corruption charges against you. I'll say you're selling drugs, that you're abusing children, that you're involved with criminal organizations. I'll make your life hell until you beg me to take what's mine." Vincent looked at the man in front of him and saw not just an enemy, but a monster. A man who had destroyed Helena, who was willing to destroy anyone who stood in his way, who used his power and influence to get what he wanted. "You have until tomorrow," Robert said, adjusting his jacket. "Noon. If Helena and the child aren't at my house by then, you'll start to understand what it means to have an enemy like me." Robert left the building, but before getting in the car, he turned once more. "Oh, and Montgomery? Don't try to run. I have eyes on all highways, all airports, all bus stations. There's nowhere you can hide from me." Vincent went up to the apartment with trembling legs, not from fear but from rage. Helena was there, playing with the baby, and when she saw the expression on his face, she immediately knew what had happened. "He was here," she said, and it wasn't a question. "He was," Vincent confirmed, telling her everything that had happened. Helena listened in silence, and when he finished, she stood up, took the baby in her arms, and looked at Vincent with a determination he had never seen before. "Then it's now," she said. "We can't wait anymore. We have to leave today. Helena, we're not prepared. We don't have everything we need." "It doesn't matter," she replied, and Vincent saw she was right. "Either we leave today, or we'll never leave." That night, while hastily packing, Vincent and Helena knew they were about to cross a line from which there would be no return. They knew they were becoming fugitives, that they were abandoning everything they knew, that they were entering a war against a man who had all the resources in the world at his disposal. But they also knew they were fighting for something worthwhile, for love, for family, for a chance to be happy together. And while the baby slept in the improvised crib, oblivious to the drama unfolding around him, Vincent and Helena prepared for the battle of their lives. The escape began at 3 a.m. on a moonless night that seemed to have been made to order for fugitives. Vincent had traded his car for a used Corolla, without tracking, which he bought with cash from a junkyard on the south side. Helena left the building first, going down the service stairs with the baby hidden in a nurse's bag, pretending it was just another night shift. Vincent left 20 minutes later, carrying only a backpack with essentials and all the money he had managed to gather. The meeting was set for the parking lot of a gas station on the Dan Ryan Expressway. When Vincent arrived, Helena was already there, sitting on a bench near the restrooms, gently rocking the baby who was whimpering softly. She seemed smaller that dawn, more fragile, dressed in a dark coat that made her almost disappear in the shadows. But when their eyes met, Vincent saw in them the same determination he had seen hours before. "Did you manage to leave without problems?" he asked, taking her bag. "I think so. I didn't see anyone following me." Helena looked around nervously. "And you?" "Me neither, but that doesn't mean anything. Robert might be waiting for us on the road." They got in the car in silence, Vincent driving, Helena in the passenger seat with the baby in her lap. The first hour of travel was tense, both constantly looking in the rearview mirrors, expecting to see the headlights of a car following them. But the road was empty, just them and some early morning truckers. The first stop was in Rockford, where Helena changed clothes in a gas station bathroom, dyed her hair red with temporary dye they had bought, and Vincent shaved the beard he had worn for years. Small changes, but ones that could make a difference if someone was looking for them by the old descriptions. "Where are we going first?" Helena asked when they returned to the car. "To the cabin I told you about. It's in the mountains near Vale. My ex-partner from the police has a property there, said I can use it whenever I want. It's isolated, no neighbors, no traffic. We can stay there for a few days, organize our thoughts, plan the next step." Helena nodded, but Vincent noticed she was tense. "What is it?" "Nothing. It's just..." She hesitated. "It's just that all this seems unreal. Yesterday I was still a nurse in Chicago, had a life, a routine. Today I'm a fugitive." Vincent extended his hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "You're not a fugitive. You're a mother protecting her son. You're a brave woman doing what needs to be done." "And you?" Helena asked. "What are you in this story?" Vincent thought for a moment before answering. "I'm a man who found a reason to live again." The baby started crying, and Helena calmed him with a lullaby her mother used to sing to her when she was a child. Vincent had never heard Helena's singing voice and discovered it was beautiful, soft, full of love. For a moment, driving down the empty road with Helena singing softly and the baby calming down, Vincent allowed himself to imagine they were just a normal family taking a trip. But the illusion didn't last long. When they stopped to refuel in Joliet, Helena saw a black car parked on the other side of the station, with two men inside who seemed to be observing all the cars that arrived. "Vincent," she whispered, squeezing his arm. "Over there." "Those men." Vincent looked discreetly and felt his stomach freeze. They were clearly security guards, possibly hired by Robert. One of them was talking on the phone, the other was photographing license plates. "Let's go." "Now," Vincent said, finishing refueling quickly. They left the station trying to seem natural, but Vincent noticed in the rearview mirror that the black car had also started moving. For the next 20 miles, the car followed them at a safe distance, and Vincent had to use all his ex-police experience to lose them. He entered and exited secondary roads, made unexpected U-turns, stopped in places where he could observe the road for a few minutes. Finally, after an hour of maneuvers, it seemed they had managed to get rid of their pursuers. But Vincent knew it was only a matter of time before Robert organized a broader search. "How did he find us so quickly?" Helena asked, when they finally stopped on a dirt road to check if they weren't being followed. "He said he had eyes everywhere," Vincent replied. "Gas stations, toll booths, hotels. He probably has people looking for a couple with a baby on every highway in the state." Helena held her son tighter against her chest. "What are we going to do?" "We're going to continue. But we're going to have to be smarter." From that moment on, the trip became a cat-and-mouse game. Vincent began using only rural roads, avoiding toll booths and large stations. They bought fuel at small roadside stations, always paying cash and never staying too long in the same place. Helena kept the baby hidden whenever they stopped, pretending he was just a bag. During the day, they hid in cheap motels on the roadside, the kind that rent rooms by the hour and don't ask questions. At night, when there was less traffic on the roads, they traveled. It was a life of shadows, of constant paranoia, of fear that at any moment they would be discovered. But it was also a life where the love between them intensified with each hour. Confined in the small space of the car, depending on each other to survive, Vincent and Helena discovered layers of intimacy they had never experienced. They talked about everything, about childhood, about dreams they had abandoned, about fears that haunted them. Helena told Vincent about the father she never knew, about the mother who died of cancer when she was 16, about the loneliness that had always been her most faithful companion. Vincent told about the child he lost, about the ex-wife who couldn't forgive him for not being home the night of the accident, about the years of depression that almost led him to suicide. "You know what's ironic?" Helena said one of those nights when they were in a motel somewhere between Illinois and Colorado. "I spent my whole life trying to escape poverty, the hard life my mother had. And it was precisely when I got a better life that I got into the worst possible situation." Vincent was lying next to her, the baby sleeping between them. "You didn't get into any situation. You were a victim of a man who took advantage of your desire to have a better life." "But I let it happen," Helena replied, her voice loaded with guilt. "I knew he was married, knew he was powerful, knew that men like him don't leave their mistresses in peace when they get tired of them. But I wanted to believe it would be different." "Helena, look at me." Vincent turned her face toward him. "You're not to blame for anything. Robert Anderson is a predator. He manipulated you, deceived you, threatened you. You were brave for leaving there, brave for protecting your son, brave for trusting me." Helena cried that night, cried for everything she had lost, for everything she was losing, for everything she might never have. But Vincent held her, whispered words of love and protection, and for the first time in months she slept without nightmares. On the fourth day of escape, they finally reached the cabin in the mountains. It was exactly as Vincent had described. Isolated, rustic, surrounded by dense forest, and with no neighbors for miles around. The access road was dirt, full of holes, almost impassable for regular cars. It was the perfect hideout. The cabin had 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a basic kitchen, and a bathroom. There was no phone, no internet, no television. It was a world apart, where they could finally breathe. In the first days at the cabin, they allowed themselves a false sense of normalcy. Vincent fixed small problems in the house. Helena took care of the baby and tried to establish a routine. They cooked together, bathed in the waterfall, made love with the intensity of those who know each moment might be the last. It was also at the cabin that Helena finally told the whole truth about Robert Anderson. "He's not just a violent congressman," she said one afternoon while nursing the baby on the porch. "He's involved in much worse things." Vincent, who was reading an old book he had found in the cabin, looked up. "What kind of things?" Helena hesitated, as if talking about it could materialize the danger. "Money laundering, influence peddling, connections with militias." She stopped, took a deep breath. "And maybe murders." "Jesus, Helena." Vincent sat in the chair next to her. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I wasn't sure, and because it was too late to go back." Helena looked at her son in her arms. "I discovered some things by accident. Phone conversations I heard, documents I saw at his house, meetings I witnessed. Robert isn't just a corrupt politician. He's part of a larger organization." Vincent felt a chill down his spine. "What kind of organization?" "I don't know exactly, but I know it involves very powerful people. Other politicians, businessmen, police officers." Helena looked at Vincent with eyes full of fear. "That's why he'll never leave me alone. It's not just about wounded pride or wanting his son back. It's because I know too much." At that moment, Vincent understood the true dimension of what they were facing. It wasn't just a powerful and violent man. It was an entire network of corruption and crime that wouldn't hesitate to kill to protect its secrets. "We have to leave the country," he said. "It's the only way to be truly safe." Helena shook her head. "With what passport? With what money? And even if we manage to leave, do you think men like these don't have contacts abroad?" Vincent knew she was right, but didn't want to accept that they were cornered. It was then that the first sign that they had been found happened. Vincent was returning from the nearest town where he had gone to buy supplies when he noticed tire marks on the dirt road that led to the cabin. Recent marks from a large car, possibly a pickup truck. He parked the car a few meters before the cabin and approached on foot, his heart beating fast. The front door was open and there were signs of struggle in the living room. Overturned furniture, broken objects on the floor. "Helena!" he shouted, running into the house. She was in the bedroom, tied up and gagged, but alive. The baby was crying in the crib but apparently hadn't been hurt. Vincent untied Helena quickly and she threw herself into his arms, trembling. "They were here," she whispered. "Two men. They searched the whole house, asked questions about you, about where we keep the money." "Why did they leave?" Vincent asked, finding it strange. "Because they weren't supposed to take me yet. They were supposed to leave a message." Helena pointed to the kitchen table where there was an envelope. Vincent opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside there was a photo, Helena entering the cabin with the baby, and a note. "We know where you are. We know you have nowhere to run. Robert wants to talk. Tomorrow, noon, at the Mountain View Resort, on the road to Vale. Come alone, or Helena and the child will pay the price." Vincent looked at Helena, who had read the note over his shoulder. In her eyes he saw not only fear, but also fierce determination. "You're not going," she said. "It's a trap." "I know it's a trap," Vincent replied. "But we don't have a choice." "Yes, we do. We can keep running, we can—" "Where to, Helena?" Vincent interrupted. "They found us here in the middle of nowhere. They'll find us anywhere." Helena held his face between her hands. "Then let's die together. I'd rather die with you than live knowing I lost you because of me." Vincent kissed her with desperate passion, knowing it might be the last time. "We're not going to die," he said, trying to convince himself as much as her. "I'll find a way to solve this." That night they made love as if the world would end the next day. It was a total surrender, desperate, full of mute promises and unspoken farewells. Helena cried during sex, and Vincent consoled her with kisses and caresses. But inside, he was also falling apart. Afterward, lying in the darkness, they made plans that both knew would probably never come to fruition. They talked about a house by the beach where the baby could grow up free and safe. They talked about marriage, about other children, about a normal and happy life. "If I don't come back tomorrow," Vincent said at dawn, "take the car and go to Uruguay. I have a contact there, an ex-cop who can help you start a new life." "Stop," Helena whispered. "Don't talk like that." "Helena, listen. If something happens to me, you can't give up. You have to keep fighting, for you and for our son." "Our son?" Helena repeated, and Vincent realized he had said it without thinking. "Yes," he confirmed. "Our son. Because now we're a family, no matter what happens." Helena cried again, but this time they were tears of love, of gratitude for having found a man like Vincent, even in the most difficult circumstances. When the sun rose, Vincent prepared for what could be the last day of his life. He checked the gun he always carried, verified there was enough ammunition, and said goodbye to Helena and the baby, as if it were a temporary farewell. But both knew they might not see each other again. And while Vincent drove down the dusty road toward the Mountain View Resort, Helena stayed at the cabin, holding her son in her arms and praying to saints she didn't believe in, asking for the man she loved to come back alive to them. Because now she was certain. She loved Vincent Montgomery with an intensity she had never felt for anyone. And if she lost him, she would also lose the only chance at happiness life had offered her. The Mountain View Resort was exactly the kind of place Robert Anderson would choose for a meeting like this. Isolated, elegant, frequented by people who knew how to keep their mouths shut. Vincent arrived punctually at noon, driving slowly through the gravel parking lot, observing every car, every movement, every shadow that could hide a threat. Robert was on the restaurant's terrace, wearing a light suit that contrasted with the rustic environment. He wasn't alone. Two large men flanked his table, clearly security guards, and Vincent could see at least three more strategically spread around the location. He was at a clear numerical disadvantage, but that wasn't what worried him. What worried him was the expression on Robert's face. It wasn't anger. It wasn't impatience. It was satisfaction. The satisfaction of a predator who had finally cornered his prey. "Punctual," Robert said when Vincent approached the table. "I like that in a man." Vincent didn't sit down. "Where are Helena and my son?" "Your son?" Robert laughed. an unpleasant sound that echoed through the empty terrace. Interesting how you became attached to the child so quickly. Late paternal instinct? Where are they? Vincent repeated, his right hand moving discreetly toward the gun in his holster. Calm down, Montgomery. They're safe, for now. Robert gestured for Vincent to sit, but that can change very quickly, depending on how this conversation goes. Vincent finally sat, but kept all his senses alert. What do you want? Justice, Robert replied, serving himself chilled mineral water. I want the natural order of things to be restored. Helena is my property, the child is my son, and you're just an obstacle that needs to be removed. Helena isn't anyone's property. Oh, but she is. Robert leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with cold malice. You see, Montgomery, you don't understand how the real world works. Helena got involved with me of her own free will. She accepted my gifts, slept in my bed, got pregnant with my child. And now that she's discovered relationships have consequences, she wants to run away like a rebellious teenager. Vincent felt anger grow in his chest, but forced himself to stay calm. And the threats, the violence, is that also part of normal relationships? Robert shrugged. Discipline. Helena was always stubborn, needed firm guidance. Firm guidance? Vincent repeated, unable to hide the disgust in his voice. Is that what you call beating a pregnant woman? I call it educating a woman who doesn't know her place. Robert took a sip of water, as if they were discussing the weather. But I didn't come here to justify my educational methods. I came to make a proposal. Vincent waited in silence. Helena and the child come back with me. You disappear from their lives and never try to contact them again. In exchange, I guarantee you stay alive and with your reputation intact. And if I refuse? Robert smiled, and this time the smile was genuinely cheerful. If you refuse, several interesting things will happen. First, Helena will have an accident. Fall down the stairs maybe. Or maybe car trouble. Accidents happen, especially with distracted women who are raising children alone. Vincent clenched his fists. You're threatening to kill the mother of your own child? I'm explaining the consequences of disobedience, Robert replied coldly. Second, the child will grow up in an orphanage. I can arrange for him to never be adopted, to have a miserable life, to become just another criminal on the streets of Chicago. Vincent's anger was transforming into something more dangerous, pure hatred. And third, you'll discover that a retired ex-detective can have many enemies. Criminals you arrested in the past, colleagues who felt wronged by your investigations, families of criminals who died in confrontations under your responsibility. Any of them could want revenge. Vincent understood the threat. Robert wouldn't just kill him. He would create a narrative that justified the murder, that transformed his death into something understandable, even expected. On the other hand, Robert continued, if you accept my proposal, you might even come out ahead. I have contacts in various sectors. I can arrange a lucrative job for you, maybe in the private sector, security consulting, that kind of thing. Do you really think I would sell Helena for money? Not sell, no. It would be more of a trade. You give up a romantic fantasy and gain a real prosperous life. Robert leaned back in his chair. Let's be honest, Montgomery. What do you really have to offer Helena? You're a middle-aged man, retired, with no prospects. Helena is young, beautiful, intelligent. She deserves a man who can give her the world. A man like you? Exactly like me. Vincent remained silent for a long moment, pretending to consider the proposal. Actually, he was observing the environment, counting the security guards, calculating distances and angles. He had a gun, but it was 6 against 1. The chances of getting out alive were minimal. But then he thought of Helena, alone at the cabin with the baby, waiting for him. He thought of the smile she had given him the morning before, when he said he would return to them. He thought of the weight of the child in his arms, of the smell of family that had filled his empty life, and he made a decision. You're right, Vincent said finally. You can give Helena things I could never give. Robert smiled, satisfied. I knew you were a sensible man. You can give her a life of constant fear. Vincent continued, his voice gaining strength. You can give her the experience of being beaten regularly. You can give her the joy of watching her own son grow up afraid of his father. Robert's smile disappeared. Careful, Montgomery. You can give her the thrill of living with a criminal, a man involved in money laundering and murders. Vincent stood up slowly. Because that's what you are, isn't it, Robert? Not just a corrupt congressman, but a murderer. Sit down, Robert ordered, and Vincent noticed the security guards move. Helena told me everything. The conversations she heard, the documents she saw, the meetings she witnessed. Vincent was partially lying. Helena had told him some things, but not everything. But the expression on Robert's face confirmed he had hit the mark. She knows about the corruption network, about the politicians involved, about the ordered murders. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And you know what else? Helena isn't at the cabin. Robert stood up abruptly. What? She hasn't been there for 2 days. As soon as we received your note, she left, far away, with all the information she has about you and your associates. Vincent smiled for the first time since arriving at the hotel. At this exact moment, she's handing everything over to a federal prosecutor I know, one of the few who's still honest. You're lying, Robert said, but Vincent saw panic in his eyes. Am I? Then why don't you check? Call your thugs at the cabin. Ask if she's still there. Robert gestured to one of the security guards, who immediately picked up his phone. Vincent waited, counting the seconds, knowing he was betting everything on a single card. The security guard spoke briefly on the phone, then approached Robert and whispered something in his ear. Vincent saw the congressman's face pale. Where is she? Robert asked, his voice tense. I don't know, Vincent lied. And even if I did, do you think I would tell you? Robert looked at him with pure hatred. You have no idea what you just did. You have no idea of the forces you just unleashed. I do. I just unleashed justice. It was then that everything happened very quickly. Robert made a gesture and the security guards advanced toward Vincent. But Vincent was prepared. He had spent 20 years in the police, had faced worse situations than this. He overturned the table, creating a temporary barrier, and drew his gun. The first shot hit the nearest security guard in the chest. The second missed by inches. The third hit Robert in the shoulder, making him spin and fall. Total chaos erupted in the restaurant. The few customers there ran for the exits, screaming. The remaining security guards scattered, looking for cover, drawing their own weapons. Vincent ran behind the bar counter, using it as protection. He had few bullets, and there were many adversaries. But he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for Helena, for the baby, for the chance they had to have a life together. The gunfight lasted only a few minutes, but it seemed like an eternity. Vincent used all his combat experience, all his coolness under pressure, all his skill with weapons. When silence finally descended on the restaurant, 3 men were dead, 2 were wounded, and Vincent had a cut on his left arm, but was alive. Robert was lying near the overturned table, bleeding, but conscious. Vincent approached him, gun pointed at his head. It's over, Vincent said. No, Robert replied, his voice weak but still full of venom. You don't understand. I'm just one piece. If I die, they'll send others. If I'm arrested, they'll send others. Helena will never be safe. Vincent knew Robert was right. Organizations like this didn't die with the fall of one member, no matter how important. Maybe, Vincent replied, but at least you won't be there to hurt her. It was then that he heard the sirens, many sirens approaching quickly. Vincent looked out the window and saw federal police cars, not local police. He saw men in suits getting out of cars, saw the organized movement of a planned operation. And he saw Helena. She was in one of the cars, holding the baby, talking to a man Vincent recognized. Federal prosecutor Marcus Johnson, his old colleague, one of the few men he still trusted in the justice system. Helena hadn't run away. She had gone to get help. In the following minutes, everything was clarified. Helena had spent the last 2 days recording a detailed testimony about Robert Anderson's activities. She had handed over documents she had secretly photographed, had provided names, dates, locations. She had built a solid case against Robert and his organization. The police operation wasn't just to arrest Robert. It was the beginning of dismantling an entire corruption network that extended across several states. When Vincent finally left the hotel, under police escort but as a protected witness, not as a criminal, Helena ran to him. The embrace they shared was desperate, urgent, full of relief and love. I thought I had lost you, she whispered, tears wetting his chest. Never, Vincent replied, kissing the top of her head. You'll never lose me." The baby, in Helena's arms, looked at Vincent and smiled. The first real smile he had seen on the child's little face. The following months were intense. Vincent and Helena had to give testimonies, participate in interrogations, live under police protection while the operation unfolded. Robert Anderson was sentenced to 30 years in prison for a series of crimes that included corruption, money laundering, threats, and attempted murder. Several other politicians and businessmen were arrested in the same operation. But the most important thing wasn't the convictions or the imprisonment of the criminals. The most important thing was that Vincent, Helena, and the baby were finally free to live their lives. They moved to a small town in rural Colorado, where Vincent bought a simple house with a large yard and a view of the mountains. Helena got a job at the local hospital, and Vincent opened a small security consulting business. The wedding happened on a spring afternoon, in a simple ceremony at the town church, with only a few friends present. Helena wore a simple white dress that made her look like a princess, and Vincent wore the first new suit he had bought in years. When the priest asked if they accepted each other as husband and wife, Vincent looked into Helena's gray eyes and saw there not only love, but also strength, courage, and the promise of a life built together. "I do," he said, his voice firm and clear. "I do," Helena replied, and her voice carried all the certainty in the world. The baby, now almost 2 years old and officially adopted by Vincent, was in the arms of the godmother, a nurse from the hospital who had become a close friend of the family. He clapped his little hands when his parents kissed, drawing laughter from the small congregation. That night, in the house that was now theirs, Vincent and Helena made love as husband and wife for the first time. It was different from all the other times. There was no desperation, no fear, no urgency. There was only love, pure and simple, and the certainty that they had the rest of their lives to discover each other. "Do you regret it?" Helena asked afterward, lying on his chest, listening to the heartbeats that now belonged to her. "Regret what?" "Opening that door that dawn, getting involved in my mess, changing your entire life for a woman you didn't even know." Vincent thought about the question for a moment. He thought about the empty apartment in Chicago, the purposeless life he led, the loneliness that consumed him. He thought about everything he had lost, but also about everything he had gained. "The only thing I regret," he said finally, "is not opening that door sooner." Helena smiled, and Vincent felt he was finally home. 2 years later, when Helena gave birth to a girl who had her father's eyes and her mother's smile, Vincent held both daughters in his arms, because the boy they had saved together was also his son in every way that mattered, and knew that life had given him more than he deserved. The story that had begun with a suitcase abandoned in a dark hallway had transformed into a family, into a life built on true love and courage to fight for what was right. And every night when he put the children to sleep and lay down next to the woman he loved, Vincent thanked that distant dawn when he had the courage to open the door and let love into his life. Because sometimes the best gifts arrive disguised as problems, and sometimes opening the door to a stranger means opening the door to the rest of your life.